Hello there, friends. Welcome to BJJ Meditations. This is BJJ Meditations episode number 81 with the one and only Josh Liu. I'm your host, Joe Hannon, Joe from Jersey. Say Young, this is a free t-shirt that I got at World Masters. It fits me kind of poorly. It's boxy. And this is a hat my wife bought for me for running. Thanks for tuning in, folks. This was a great conversation with Josh. I feel like there are only great conversations to be had with Josh. Josh feels a lot like, and I don't mean this in a patronizing way, Josh, but you feel a lot like the younger brother I never had. Just feel this deep resonance connection with Josh. We are into a lot of the same things, have a lot of the same proclivities, and while that certainly presents certain dangers when it comes to lapses in judgment, it also creates this sort of like resonant state that I just find so energizing. And that's how I came away from this conversation with Josh. In addition to just searching and sorting through some pretty heavy, deep stuff at the moment, Josh has launched an amazing journaling product called Sherpa. It's a journal for athletes powered by AI. He talks a little bit about this project at the end of the podcast, and I highly encourage you to check it out. I've been using it and I really enjoy it. So without further ado, here is my brother for another mother, Josh Liu. So yeah, how are things going?
Good. Yeah, I just got back from Burning Man on Tuesday night. Today's Friday. So had a few good nights of sleep and starting to feel back to normal self.
That was one of the things I wanted to ask you in the actual podcast. So I guess we'll just start now. It's like, how was Burning Man? Seems like you're a Burning Man veteran. Pictures looked beautiful. Yeah, how was it? What are your impressions? How many times have you been?
This was my third year in a row. So 2022 was like super hot, bunch of dust storms, but it was my first year. So it was like, I was just loving everything. And second year was last year, which was like the rainy, muddy, wet year.
Yeah.
So we kind of lost half our burn to kind of just being stuck in our camp, and everyone just ended up drinking basically in camp and hanging out. And then this year, the weather was like, I think like high 80s, low 90s. So it was very, very mild. And this was my first year leading a camp. Last year, I kind of co-led and supported. But yeah, my intention going in was to party a lot less, get a little bit more sleep, do a little more of like the daytime workshops and stuff like that, and go into classes. And it was awesome. That's why I feel like my recovery is so much better this year. And yeah, there's just so much to do out there and so much to see and people, and it's a long week.
What attracts you to Burning Man?
I think it's I first heard about it when I was in high school, and I just thought it was like, whoa, it's like a utopian society out there. Like there's no money, everything's free. People bring gifts in whatever form they want to bring. And then as I got closer to learning more about it, I actually got invited because I was telling my friends about hunting. And I was like, oh man, the gift that I would love to give is to bring elk meat or deer meat out there and like educate people on like where their food comes from. And he was like, dude, that people would love that there. And then a year later, he invited me to go. And you go, and like one of the stereotypes is like, are people really not that nice out there? Are they going to just be like, giving so freely? And it really is. It's like, oh man, I could talk about burn forever, but they've kind of flipped like the society. I don't know, out here in normal world, when it comes to giving and stuff like that, a lot of people are like, there's a reciprocity. Like you kind of expect something back. But out at burn, basically, if your camp, the more your camp gives and the more unique the gifts are, then you get better placement next year, closer to the front of the map, which means you're closer to get ice. And then it also means more foot traffic, which will allow you to give even more. And so there's a competition out there. What increases your status is the more you give, the nicer you are, the more you bring, the better organized you are and all that. It's like a competition to give more versus out here we're like consuming things and trading things. That part attracts me a lot. And then my intention word for the burn this year was authenticity, because I feel like they call it the default world. In the normal world, there's a lot of roles that we play, like a role at work, a role when I go to Jiu-Jitsu, my family. And at the burn, you don't really have a role to play, and you really can lean into just being who you are. And that's where you see all the people. Some people express themselves through wacky costumes. Other people are teaching jujitsu out there, meditation, workshop, dance, music, whatever they want to do. serving tea, making food, and you can lean into whoever you are, and your uniqueness or your weirdness is just like celebrated. They're just like, oh my God, more of that. That is so cool. So many random little things along the way, but that's my little rant about why I like it so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've always looked at from a distance with like a mix of a seeker's curiosity and like East Coast cynicism, you know, like
Yeah.
looking at it like, oh, this is not a thing for me. Like I don't have that disposition. But then there's a part of me that's like, well, it is a thing for you because it's the opposite. You know, it's like it's the opposite of who you are at your core. And it's one of those things where I feel like I could slip into it very easily and sort of find my way through it and probably enjoy myself. So I'm always curious about people's impressions who go there, especially people who go there regularly. And I was thinking about you at Masters too, because last year there was monsoon rain in Las Vegas, and it was the same rainstorms you guys were getting just destroyed with. And streets were flooded, and I remember like coming out of my alcoholic haze at some point and reading the news and just seeing like people can't escape Burning Man because like the roads are just flooded out and shit. That must have been a wild experience for you. What was that like?
Yeah, I think the news kind of sensationalized a lot of it, but it essentially was like it made it very. They closed the roads down, and we ended up getting delayed. I think like a day or maybe 2 days to get out before it had to
Ooh,
dry
that's a
up.
long time.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. It would have been worse if it kept raining and we were really
Mm.
delayed. But we had a blast. I feel like it was just like the most like hysterically funny, disastrous, like what the fuck is going on? We're so fucked, but we have all this alcohol. Let's just hang out. We have DJs around. You know, like kind
I
of.
don't know why Riverside thinks I'm giving you a thumbs down right now, but apparently it does.
But yeah, so we had some epic parties and conversations with our friends. We hung out with our neighbors a lot. We had a tea house that we built, so that kind of became a shelter. And I remember one night we were sitting there, and then my campmate comes up to me. He's like, "Dude, there's like a Ukrainian party going on in our tea house. All these people from Ukraine." And they were like, then they were so nice. They all took off their shoes, like they're just wearing socks on our rugs. And I was like, cool, yeah, let them hang out as long as they want. So yeah, it was funny.
Well, it sounds like a great
But
time, regardless of the rain last year. But I was thinking about you, and I was also thinking about how you have a competition coming up and how that preparation's going for you, and sort of like what is arising as you confront that.
yeah, I do have a competition coming up here in I think 3 weeks, 2.5, something like that. I had an injury, so I couldn't train about 2 weeks going into the burn, and then at the burn, I was like, you know what, I want to stop by the jiu-jitsu camp and like start training again. And the day I show up, Margot Ciccarelli is teaching us crab ride from the leg drag position. And I'm like, what are you doing here? I just saw you compete at ADCC like a week ago. So that was super cool. So I got to get my first training back after injury at the burn, little dusty roll. And then went back to class yesterday and the day before and feel really good. So right now my focus is just get more volume in, get the cardio kind of back, and just try to control my ADHD brain and like not learn anything new and just go and
Yeah,
just roll a lot and get that pace again and that intensity again while staying safe and not injured. So,
yeah, it's a real tension that a lot of people experience. And it's interesting. I was just talking to somebody who also has ADHD and is entertaining, competing, and he said to me, "Oh, like how do I navigate this? How do I prepare? There's so much I don't know." And I was like, "That's the problem. There's an infinite amount of information out there that you don't know in jiu-jitsu alone, and like you're not going to cram it all into your head." And I told him that the approach that I take in training camp is to only take on things that close really big gaps that are revealed. Like I'm not going to try and absorb new information. Like one of my teammates very good naturedly was like, "Oh, I got to show you how to do uh this like the Rutolo version of the rear naked choke. Because you have like the perfect long forearms for it." And I was like, "Show me afterward," because like I don't want to be attempting something that's fresh in my brain, not fully formed. It would be like going into battle with like someone else's rifle. Like I'm not going to do that. I don't trust that rifle. So I'm wondering like, what's that experience like for you? Or do you feel like pulled into that sort of like, oh, this thing is going to be the thing that unlocks my performance for this competition?
I think maybe the last few competitions I felt a little bit like that. This time around, since I'm just fresh off injury, I'm just like so happy to be able to roll hard again.
Oh, that's great.
Um, yeah, so last night my intention for practice was like, just don't skip any rounds, but don't try to kill anyone. Like, don't go for it too much and just get back into like, can I roll injury free and like stay out of injury zone? I think maybe yeah, I think that's my focus for maybe the next week or so. Maybe I'll do some positional stuff as well to like sharpen up some of my escapes and those bad, like spend some time in some bad positions. But I don't have that much time. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that makes sense to you or if you would adjust that strategy.
No, it makes sense to me. There's nothing I would change there. There was something I wanted to ask you about though. What was it? It was relative to a point you just made. I don't know. It'll come back to me. Oh, I remember what it was. So you're focusing in on sort of like the essentials, focusing on positional training. You've said to me on several occasions that you tend to grapple or try to come to terms with this ADHD brain. What are some of the tactics that you're relying on to keep that, I don't want to say under control, but to maybe just like work with it is a better way of phrasing it as you prepare for this competition?
Yeah, I think it affects me more in life than in jiu-jitsu, probably. The way it appears in jiu-jitsu is like shifting focuses a little bit too often, maybe. But I think in life, I went to therapy because I was like, I'm pretty sure I have ADHD. Like that was my presenting issue. Turns out there's a lot more deeper, heavier stuff to work through. But
It's
my
funny how that works
initial
out.
I know my initial presenting thing was like, hey, I think I have ADHD. I don't think I want medication for it, but like, can we talk about this? Like, what do you suggest? And the outcome was like, my therapist is like, yeah, you basically have it. I mean, we could get you the label if you want it. And all that allows is then for you to get medication. But it seems like you manage it quite well. And your brain is going to be your brain no matter what label you put on it. And I really like what she said to me. And it turned out I wasn't giving myself enough credit for how I was managing it. I think there's three things that help me with my ADHD in life in general. The first is probably maybe two. I sleep a lot. Like I get good sleep, except for like when I'm at the burn or like traveling or something like that. But at home, I try to sleep a lot. And then on top of that, I take a nap in the afternoon. And then I exercise. I think that helps a ton. And then meditation and journaling are the two more mental aspects. So I guess there's two physical, like the sleep and exercise, and then the two mental is like the journaling and the meditation. I think help manage a
Yeah.
lot.
Last time you were on the podcast, we talked a bit about meditation. I definitely want to get into the journaling aspect there because you've got some exciting shit going on. But I remembered what I wanted to ask you about. It was exciting to me to hear you talk about debating like whether I should be aggressive and like trying to kill somebody in this round in training, because like that's something that you and I have discussed. So I'm stoked that like you finally feel comfortable to turn it on like that because it's so important for competition prep. So talk to me like a little bit about how you're walking that line, because like you're not the only person I've talked to about this. I've talked to a few other people at my school who balance this tension, and I think it would be great for them to hear a bit about it. But there's this fear of like, am I going to go too far? I'm going into this competition. Everyone who's competed has had this experience, I think, where like you go out there and the match is over and you blink your eyes and you're like, that was way more intense than I thought it was going to be. I wasn't ready for that. And the way you prepare yourself for that is to simulate it in training. But it's hard to simulate that in training if you're like afraid to go there. So talk a little bit about how you built comfort and familiarity with that feeling so that you could enhance your performance on comp?
Yeah, such a good question. And I do want to say Joe's being humble here. He's been coaching me, just doing one-on-one coaching. And I think one of the early things I think I wanted to work with you on was this like aggression. I feel like in life in general, I tend to be a little too nice, people pleaser, counter puncher esque in jujitsu, like let them kind of dictate and me ride the wave and figure it out versus like being aggressive. And through this journey, as we've been coaching, one of the homework assignments or training plans that you gave me, one piece was to go to class and do one all out round per class. And so for me, I found this guy, Jose, and he's like purple belt, super scrambly, very athletic, but so safe. Like he catches so many dominant positions on me, but his game's very movement oriented. And so it allows me to move and just like try to survive in there with him and just go as hard as I can, but he's always one step ahead of me. And so that's how I first took it on, was like finding him. And then slowly from there, it was finding other upper belts, like those purple brown belt guys. You can just try whatever the heck you want. They're gonna be way ahead of you, and you're safe the whole time, which is really nice. There was one time where I tried to go super hard against like a blue belt that was way heavier than me, and I like injured my toe. And so there was a little balance there. Like I started being too aggressive, and then we talked about, hey, self-preservation as well. Like keep that in mind. So yeah, I hadn't even noticed that last night. I was like, there was a purple belt I rolled with, another brown belt, and yeah, I was trying really hard.
Yeah.
Not crazy, like, but where I guess they allowed me to feel comfortable to go hard, knowing that the risk of injury is probably pretty low with them. So yeah, it helps me and like it forces me to use my A game because like I can barely think when I'm rolling with them. And then right now it's good for me because coming off injury, like I need that pace and that cardio. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to return back to baseline with my A game and the jiu-jitsu competition shape.
Yeah. And, I think it's worth underscoring that it is a tightrope that you have to walk, and you have to know who you're safe with and you're not. And like, I know I talked to you about this, and I've talked to other people about it too, other people that I've coached. You can't, like, even as a black belt, I will not do a hard round with a blue belt or certainly a white belt, some purple belts, just because there's like a wildness and a lack of control there. And you figure that out. You figure out who you're safe with and who you're not. You figure out, like, there are certain black belts who, like, if you're blue belt, white belt, and you're coming after them hard, they're going to like take offense to that, and then they're going to take it out on you. And you figure out who those people are, and you comport yourself accordingly. Like, it's just want anyone to who's listening to this to think carefully about who they do this with and how they do it. But it's essential, I think, to the competitive prep process, because competition in my mind is like the ultimate pressure test. Like, so if you're talking about simulating competition in your training, which you just described, let's say you're operating there at like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. You can't get to 10 out of 10 in the training room. Like, it's not safe. You can't simulate 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 is going to be that one day that you peak for. And then you're going to spend a week hopefully backing off the intensity, recovering, and then returning to like a steadier training rhythm. So, it's peaks and valleys with the intention of peaking like for one moment, on the mat in your performance. But yeah, it takes a lot of comfort in the fact that like you have control, knowing you have control to walk that tightrope in the gym. And I mean, there are probably gyms out there where it's not safe to do that, and that sucks. You should probably find yourself a new gym if that's the case, but it sounds like you're in a good spot where you can.
It's funny because I just remembered that accidentally, like, some guy had a leg entry on me and I was kind of turned around, like my back facing him, and I tried to back step way over real quick, and bam, my heel went straight into his head yesterday. Not super hard, like luckily it wasn't his temple, but yeah, I was that white belt for a moment there. So
hey, we all are.
I'm still fumbling through it. Thank you to those upper belts who like are down to roll with me during this phase.
So what is attracting you to competition right now?
Yeah, it's so scary. I think that's probably what attracts me to it. I think in my journey of growing up and becoming more confident and comfortable in who I am, I think doing hard things has probably been the most clear brick that I can lay that makes me feel like confident. And so it started with, I think, sports in general, and then doing meditation retreats and that kind of thing. And as I entered jujitsu, I was like, it just was so scary to compete that I felt like I had to do it. I think that it's so scary. The nerves, everything, and also the mirror. Like, it is such a nice mirror when you immediately when I sign up for a competition, it's like that mirror just gets flipped around. I can feel the tension already. So getting to learn about myself through the process is the best part. Yeah. And also, like,
Yeah.
finding out what are those little mental weaknesses, that come out, why they come out, and getting to understand my psychology a bit more when it comes to performing in like a combat experience. Because I used to get nervous for bow hunting and stuff like that, but it's way different. It's not.
Yeah, no one's hunting you back when you're bow hunting. That's
Right. Yeah.
That's what I try to explain to, people who don't do it but do jiu-jitsu. I'm like, yeah, this is a lot harder. Worst case scenario, the deer runs away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different kind of intensity, but I like the personal growth aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if there are right or wrong reasons to do it, right? But like, that's certainly, I think there are only a few of us who can be truly great world champions, but your reasons feel a lot like my reasons, so there's probably some bias there. But I think your head's in the right place, your heart's in the right place.
Yeah, I resonated a lot with I think I first heard your episode on BJJ mental models about like the why and all of that, the deeper stuff. And that really resonated with me a lot. I think there was a coach, Eric Uresk, out in Victory MMA here in San Diego. And he was talking about how a lot of that deeper stuff just gets left on the table when you look at jiu-jitsu as just a sport. And yeah, I resonated a lot with a lot of the deeper themes, increasing your self-awareness and the personal growth. And yeah, I've only competed, let's see, I think I've done 3. Yeah, I've had 2 wins, and I think it's 4 losses or 6 losses. Yeah, 2 wins, 6 losses. And yeah, each time prepping, trying to prep the technical aspect, and then the mental prep has been really interesting because I was trying to figure out what kind of mindset works for me. So I think my first competition was probably the easiest one because it just felt like I'm just so happy to be here. Like my mindset
totally
was like,
naive.
I was just proud to go and do the thing. And then I won my first match. And after that first match, I was exhausted. And in my head, I could feel myself like, holy shit, if I win one more, I'm going to get gold. Like, no way. Step out there, barely able to breathe, just scrambling around, surviving. I think I got scored like 12-2 or something. Survived. And then was just stoked that whole day, like so happy. Second competition, I signed up for a weight class a little bit heavier than me. I wanted to put on some weight. It was like 150, 160. And then I got food poisoning like a week before. So I was like 151. So I decided to sign up for the weight class below, but I didn't pull myself out of the weight class above. So I ended up doing both. And then I went in, won my first match. Was like, oh, cool. Like, win another one. Oh shit, I might get gold here. Second match, bam, ankle lock. It was really like a calf slicer in like 30 seconds, just tapped. So
yeah.
Like, oh, dang. And then I was just so exhausted after that. The next 2 matches, I could feel myself sitting on the chair. Didn't want to be there. I felt like puking. I was like dry heaving a little bit. So nervous. And then I just like tried to conserve energy. So like for 3 minutes in those matches, I'm getting murdered. And then when I decided to go, I really turned around. I sunk in a rear naked choke on that guy, and the bell rang like right before I could lock in my other hand. It felt really good. And then third match, same, getting mounted triangle. Fourth match, mounted triangle, minute left to go, escape, sweep, pass, mount. And then so exhausted, I just get swept and mounted and lose. But just to feel that little weakness in my head of like reserving that energy, not pushing the gas, going for it, knowing I had another match left. So it really inspired me when I heard your story of like when you got sick and you went. I forgot what was the name of the competition. Was it the New York Open?
Yeah, it was the spring New York Open or the summer.
Yeah,
Summer, I
and that
think.
feeling of leaving it all on the mats. Like I hadn't had that feeling since the first competition, probably, where I was just so exhausted. But yeah, I don't know. That was my second competition. Then I went to my third, just got destroyed, 2 matches. Basically spent my entire time someone on my back, body triangle, switching back and forth. Didn't get tapped out, just defended really well and survived. But those are my 8 matches across 1, 2, 3 competitions.
Yeah. I don't know if I've said this explicitly, but like I've certainly lost more matches than I've won too. And like that's fine. I think that's normal, like unless you're some insane athlete who has a ton of time to devote to training, and like God bless you if you are, like that's fantastic. But I feel like your story through competition is probably like closer to the average, and I want people to hear that. I think that my friend Diego and I were just talking earlier today, and he was talking about Power Trip Worldwide, which is like this magazine he has going. It's going to launch in the fall. And he was saying, I think the biggest difference between Power Trip and all the other sources of media out there, with the exclusion of yours and possibly mine, is that they're all top down. Like it's all about who are the biggest stars, who are the biggest black belts, who win the most shit, and how can we put a spotlight on them and hear what they have to say. And like there's a ton of utility to hearing what those people want to say. Like I want to hear what Marcelo Garcia has to say. I want to hear about his thoughts on the game. You may not like Gordon Ryan, but like I'm listening to what Gordon Ryan has to say. Or you name the star athlete, like doesn't matter. Like let's separate their personality from what they do in jiu-jitsu. Like, yeah, I want to know about their tactics and the way they think about the game. But like when it comes to the softer, more ephemeral and more relatable stuff, like Power Trip is a bottom up magazine. Like it's a magazine that's started by a white belt, right? Like 1-800-BJJ Help is a story about you essentially in real time figuring out this martial art. And in a lot of ways, like, yeah, I'm a black belt in BJJ Meditations, but I feel like my job on BJJ Meditations is to look stupid in public and just be like, yeah, it's kind of air my failings to the world so that others might benefit from them. And I feel like that's certainly more approachable and more relatable. So like, that's why I'm asking you this stuff. Because I know there are a lot of people in my school, there are a lot of people listening to this podcast, perhaps, who are like on the fence about competing. And there are so many things that are inhibiting them from doing it, but probably chief among them is like, well, I don't want to lose. Well, you're sitting here talking to 2 fucking losers and we're doing all right, we're getting a lot more out of this process than just some medals. And my good buddy Jeff's competing tomorrow. Actually, I'm going to be coaching him. He won a local comp, and he was like, it feels like pretty hollow when they put that medal around your neck. And it does. It does. Even when I got silver at the New York Open, I was like, okay, I finally podiumed at the New York Open, but like, I don't even know where that medal is. To me, everything that was intangible about that experience is like the medal to me, and had I not gotten that medal, like I feel just as proud of that as I do like going again in the summer and being really sick and fighting anyway, like that's why you do it. That's why you do it. It's not about like the win-loss record unless you're a professional athlete, in which case, like, yeah, your career is riding on that. But if you're just like someone listening to this podcast, like you should go have that experience and not fixate so much on whatever the outcome ends up being, because whatever the outcome is in terms of like whatever negative or positive valence you put on it or is put upon it by other people around you, there's going to be like this undeniable transformational element to it that is just fucking amazing. And like, you're not going to get it by watching ADCC or CJI on your couch. It's just not going to happen.
100%. I remember a mentor of mine growing up said the purpose of a goal is not achieving the goal, but it's about who you become in the process of trying to achieve the goal. And I just love how like this whole process orientation versus outcome orientation of like, you can go into a competition and be like, my goal is to win. And that can be true. And at the same time, your goal can be to strategize and plan and have a training plan, like all the things you need to do to achieve that goal. That can be your goal. You can have a process goal. Like, I need to train 3-4 times a week, do this kind of positional work or whatever that might be. And that whole process in and of itself, even if you didn't even show up for the competition, like you would improve so much more. And when I think about my last 2 matches where I spent most of the time defending a rear naked choke on my back, hand fighting, I was like, that is the best 10 minutes of hand fighting I've ever done in my life. Like that is the best practice of hand fighting. Like I probably learned more about hand fighting in those 10 minutes than I have in any other 10 minutes of my training. And I like that way of thinking about competition as it's just like a really hard practice session, or like a handful of hard rounds. And those rounds will add up. And I guess that's why they say competing in it is a skill in itself. Because
Yeah, totally.
yeah, you just have to. The only way to get better is by doing it.
You could be like a total gym shark who just destroys everyone and just go out and shit the bed in competition because you just don't understand the strategy. Like I've certainly made that mistake. Not that I'm like a gym shark who shuts everybody down, but there are people like that in every gym who they're just like the biggest, baddest person in the room. Might not necessarily be the biggest, but like they have beautiful jiu-jitsu, but like they haven't practiced playing that game,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's another interesting part is like the performance in the gym versus performance in competition. I feel like that gap is maybe mostly mental. Maybe part of it's adjusting to the format and everything like that. But I think a lot of that's mental. And I think about that because I used to do archery. And when you're shooting in your backyard versus shooting at a target at the I don't know what to call it, the school or facility, it's the same exact target, your exact same distance, everything, but it's just in your head. You really want to win, and that wanting kind of trips you up.
You were talking about that moment when you were like, one more match and I can win a gold medal. Like I've certainly had that moment in New York. I just got to beat this one more guy, and like I'll achieve like the unimaginable thing. It's like this thing I've never allowed myself to believe. And like something Josh Waitzkin always says is that the moment you're closest to victory and you realize it, that's the moment you're closest to defeat. And
Wow.
I've experienced that so many times, and like he likens it to this moment when he was competing in Tai Chi push hands when, he was like almost going to shove this guy out of the ring and he would have won the world championship. And something in his brain was like, you're 2 inches away from a world championship. And then as soon as he had that realization, like his head hit the mat, like he got dumped because he fell out of the flow of the moment. And yeah, like he was literally 2 inches away from a world championship, and he'd never been further away from winning it in that moment. And I think about that often. I've never been, I shouldn't say never, I've only been that close like a couple of times, but I certainly had that realization like you too, where I was like, oh wow, this is actually achievable. Like I can actually do it. And I wish I never realized that. It's almost better to be naive in those situations.
Yeah, the mental side of that's so interesting. I think about archery a lot because I was just doing our local league and like competing against the local guys. And it's kind of like bowling, you score out of 300, you're shooting a 20-yard target. And when you have such a high score going into that last round, for some reason it just feels different shooting that arrow, even though you're doing the exact same thing. And my archery coach was like this Zen, like kind of Buddhist guy, super old guy teaching for a long time. And when we would do lessons together, he would tell me like after I shoot an arrow, I'm like, where to hit? He's like, dude, he was like, you should know already where it's going to hit without even having to look at the target. Everything that you need to do is leading up to that moment where you release the arrow, and right when it releases, you'll feel whether that's a good shot or a bad shot. You'll know. Don't look over there to the external thing to validate if you did a good thing. You'll know in your body, and you'll just keep flowing. Each arrow is like your first arrow, just one at a time. Very meditative,
so funny,
very Zen,
man.
like.
It's just like, I'm sorry to cut you off. First, like keep going. I'll finish my thought.
No. That was it, that Zen mind, beginner mind thing.
So I was talking to Josh about this the last time I was in Costa Rica, and I feel like I'm the least Zen human being who's ever walked the face of the earth. Like, I'm a work in progress. I'm working on it. Um, but when it comes to archery, it's almost like I did it intuitively because I never had any formal archery training at all. I taught myself how to shoot in my backyard when I was like 10. And, I've had like pretty good success since I was a kid of bow hunting. Like, I've only ever missed once. And thankfully, like, it was a clean miss. I feel like I'm just setting myself up here for like a bunch of disastrous misses here now, but like, I'm just telling it like it is. Like, I've had a lot of success bow hunting, and I'm a bad archer. Like, everything I do is wrong. Like, I was last fall, I was in the store, just like getting my new bow set up, right? And the guy was watching me. I was shooting through a sheet of paper, essentially to track how my arrows were flying, like if they were stable in flight or not. It's like a 2-yard shot, right? Like, the whole point is just to put the arrow through the paper and see how it patterns on the paper. And the guy's just looking at me. He's like, "Why do you release like that? Like, why do you do this? Why do you do that?" And I'm like, "I don't fucking know, man. Like, it's been working pretty well for me for I don't know, like 20 years or whatever." But that sense that you're talking about of like, I know the shot is good from the second I let it go. Like, I know good shot or bad shot just from how the bow feels in my hand, or like it's even like just it's like a felt sense, Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It's like a feeling like all through my body, like that's a good shot. Like the deer that I killed last fall, it was I killed it with like 2 minutes of legal light left, and I could not see where I hit it, but like I just knew. I'm like, that's a good shot. It's just gonna be a matter of like finding this deer, and we found it. And it was a good shot. I mean, it was an okay shot, but like, it was a fatal shot. And the deer didn't suffer or anything like that. But that's like the one area where I have access to that is in archery. And I feel like it's because it was never like, it was a purely internal thing. It was never like corrupted by an external teacher. Like, I'm sure I could be a much better archer, but I'd probably be a worse bow hunter, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. I wonder how it translates to jujitsu. This like wanting the outcome too much, and you become, maybe your attention shifts to some future outcome instead of dealing with what's happening in the present moment. And then wanting it too less, like not caring enough, and like kind of giving up before it's over. And how
Yeah.
to stay in that middle zone of like just being with what is and flowing and bringing your best to the situation. That's really interesting to me. I feel like that's the lesson that I'm trying to learn, and experience more and more of that. Like, my metric for success is like, if I can be in that middle zone for more time in my competition matches, like more and more each time, I'm happy with that. Whether I win or lose, like, doesn't really matter. If I can feel that like flow in that environment, I'd be really happy with myself.
And this like personal calculus that you're doing right now in real time, and when you're not talking to me too, like, this is the process. I feel like everybody wants, especially when I'm talking to students at the school or, online or whatever, everybody wants like the script to follow. And I'm relating to this more as a teacher. You're relating to this more as like an artist in this moment. But I'm very reluctant to tell people what to do, because I certainly have, like, there's my way of shooting the bow. There's my way of playing X guard. There's my way of doing whatever in jiu-jitsu, playing close guard. And there are much better ways. There are much more technically proficient ways of doing it. And those all work better for some people. Maybe they would work better for me. And I'm open to the possibility that they would. And like, I study it, I feel it out. But ultimately, like, I have to do what feels true to me. And only you can be the driver of that process. And like, it's not like you arrive at some destination in jiu-jitsu where like you have driven that process to completion. Like, you're sitting here, white belt Josh, you're going to be doing the same fucking thing when you're a black belt. Like, I'm still doing it right now. And maybe there are people out there who are black belts and they feel like they got it all figured out, and like, Maybe they have the plaudits to prove it. Maybe they have like a bunch of world championships or whatever. I think my hypothesis is that those people are still, they're still learners on some level. You know, they're still like they're still a part of them, and it's the part that's driving their virtuosity that is still like a white belt.
Yeah, it's pretty valuable, I think, to hold on to that mindset. I'm a little worried about getting to that plateau, the next plateau, wherever it is on this journey, and
Blue
feeling
belt.
like, yeah, I heard that, the blue belt blues, like where you like, it reminds me of this Neil deGrasse Tyson quote. It's like, you know enough to, what is it? You know enough to think you're right, but not enough to know you're wrong. And I feel like that's up ahead. Now I'm gonna be like, no, I know what I'm talking about when I really don't know that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to hold on to that beginner's mind as long as I'm trying to push off that plateau as long as I can.
Yeah, you can't. And, you know that intellectually. You'll experience it for yourself, but it's an undulation. Like that's what I can tell you from sitting here and like 10 years into the game or however long I've been doing this. You just come to accept that there are going to be times when you feel like you know what you're doing and times when you feel like you're completely lost, and that's just part of the process.
Yeah. I wonder if the ADHD will help. Because like maybe I'll be in a rut and I'll be like, you know what? This looks interesting that I saw on Instagram. Let's go play some like ecological games around this position and like try this wacky stuff. Maybe that'll distract me long enough. I don't know. Who knows?
There's certainly advantages to that. Like, all these things we talk about, like neurodivergence, these
Mm.
things have evolved. Here I am, like going way out of my depth. Not like a neurobiologist by any sense, but like my thinking here is that all these things have evolved in the human experience for a reason. Like clearly you're more equipped to handle certain things, and then like somebody who's more typical is equipped to handle other things. Like in some ways I think we're probably mentally opposite in that sense. Like I'm the kind of guy who like can fixate on the thing for as long as necessary. Like I will break the problem before I before I move on to something else. But like somebody like you could just walk up and be like, "Hey, well, have you ever considered this?" It's like, "Fuck you, man. Why didn't I why didn't I think of that?" But there are advantages to like both forms of consciousness, and I think the trick is knowing when to call in support and know like, okay, who can look at this problem in a new light or from a new angle that I can't see. I mean, in jiu-jitsu and life, that's certainly been something that's helped me tremendously from time to time. So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to, like you were saying earlier, like I don't want to pathologize these things, but there is a certain utility to knowing how you operate and like knowing where your blind spots are, and you know that.
Trying to see more of it day by day. Yeah, it's very interesting how top competitors, like the elite, can look so different in their mentality and their styles, and everything. It's cool to see how deeply personal their craft becomes, and their relationship with the craft is like so unique and personal. You can have like the brute, like hate losing, chip on your shoulder person. You can have like total zen process person. You can have the very, very anxious, neurotic type, and they can all do really well. And I guess each they have to figure out their own journey to have a healthier relationship with their outcomes and their process. That's
They got to
really,
be true to
really
themselves.
fascinating.
I think that's the key. That's like the secret sauce to all those people and their success is like they're not trying to be someone else. Like
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan is a fucking bastard. And like that's part of what drives his success, right? Like I think about Gordon Ryan a lot. I'm like, is this persona? Is this who he really is? And I tend to lean in the direction of like, this is who he really is. And like, this is what drives his success. And, we could sit here and evaluate him or any other athlete through like a moralistic lens. But if we're just looking at this from like a pure performance perspective, I think that's like the secret sauce for a lot of these people is that they're just unapologetically themselves. And I see so many people amateurs struggle in competition. And my sort of working hypothesis is that especially with the people, there are certainly people whose jiu-jitsu is just like objectively bad, but there are other people who I'm like, I don't get it. Like this guy or woman is great in the gym, and then they go out here and it all falls apart. And I think it's really boils down to the fact that they're just like trying to be something or put on some sort of like persona or affect something that's just not true to who they are. And like, yeah, that's something I'm still trying to figure out too. So I don't mean to sound all high and mighty like I have the answer to this, but you know, like I think about my son, and if there's like one piece of advice I can hope I can impart to him, as certainly younger than I figured out, is that like you can only be you, man. You know, you can only be you. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be like writing an essay, going out to fight in a jiu-jitsu competition, painting a picture. It doesn't matter. Like you are the locus point through which all of these things are made real. So like trying to be somebody else is just a fucking waste of time. And how do you explain that to a 3-year-old? Especially one that's throwing a tantrum over something right now.
That is beautiful. I'm in that Burning Man mode right now, but that's what I love about it so much. You just see people being who they are. There was a group of people running around and they ran up to some random dude walking and they were like, "Do you consent to being a flower?" And he's like, sure. And then a bunch of other people dressed as bees ran out and just like basically all like just surrounded him like as close as they could, and then they just buzzed off and flew away. Like, someone had this strange idea that they wanted to play this little prank on people, and they just got to do it out there. And it's silly, you know, but there's something in them that was like, this would be kind of a delightful, weird, funny thing to do, and fuck it, I'm going to do it. And there's just thousands of versions of that kind of stuff, where in the regular world, you get so caught up in all the roles and, you know, how things should be or how I should act or whatever. It's nice to lean into that authenticity of like, there is no should way to be, as long as you're treating people with respect and, you know, with love and care, whatever, then go for it. And, you know, it's making me think like maybe this competition, I've tried to have like a theme, a mental theme going into each competition. And this one, I think I might make it around something about authenticity. Like, it's not just about what I do on the mats, but the whole day. Can I lean into who I really am in every moment? That, including the fighting, including the waiting around, including the before and after. Maybe that could be a good quote unquote goal for me, is just be me that day.
Yeah. I love it, man. I think it's a great approach. Of course I'm biased because it's very similar to kind of what I've been working on. Like I'm just surrounded by so many amazing people. Like I've got Emily constantly beside me. I've got Josh. I've got so many great people in my gym. I've got my head coach. I've got all these people we meet in our work, and I'm like, how do I sort of steal their fire? You know, like how do I be more like Josh? How do I be more like Emily? How do I be more like Shane? And ultimately I can't, you know, like you can only be Josh. I can only be me. And what that looks like for me on comp day is just like feeling whatever I'm feeling. You know, I don't really play the game of like, well, this is how Emily would relate to this, or this is how Josh would relate to this. It's like, nah, man, like right now I'm fucking scared, you know, and I'm just going to do some resonance breathing and like feel that, you know, or like right now I'm kind of indifferent. Like just to me, like it sounds stupid, but that's like the most courageous thing for me to do. I don't know about for other people, but I just see so many people on comp day doing weird shit. And I'm like, is this really what you would be? Maybe it is. I don't know. You know, I'll never forget at the New York Open, this guy I see all the time I see him, and I see his girlfriend or his wife at every single competition I do. And I think he thought like I was in his division, and he had like his headphones on, and he just like looks me straight in the eyes, and he's like mouthing along to some song that he's singing. And I'm like, all right, man, you know, like we'll see out there, you know, if we are in the same division, like we'll let the jiu-jitsu do the talking, right? Like, I'm like, is this really you? Because if it is, great. Or is like this something you saw somebody else do, so you're doing it too, to like try and cop their style or whatever? Like, but it's more than just copying their style. Like it's if that's the case, like it's diluting your potency in a way. And I think that's what you're talking about when you're talking about this concept of authenticity. It's like, well, how can I not dilute whoever I am in this moment? Because that's how I'm going to win. It's like, if I can be 100% Josh in this moment, like, that's how I'm going to win this match. That's my best shot to at victory.
Yeah, it's funny because that guy, it's like we have no way to tell if he's trying something on or if that's really him, and
Yeah.
it just happens to look like a lot of other people. But yeah, I guess only he can know.
Well, then the weird thing would be like, okay, we're going to get really meta now. So let's say he's trying something on and it works, right? Like, he goes out there and kicks my ass. But like, then he has this false positive of like, oh, I did this thing and it worked. And he's going to think it's because he did this thing. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
it is
that's
because
very
he did
tricky.
The thing.
It's very
This
tricky.
is why I say I'm just a guy on the internet with a microphone that you can buy at Guitar Center, right? Like, I don't make any claims about the absolutism of my ideas, but my hypothesis and my hunch is that being anything that you aren't is probably going to just lead you further away from where you want to be.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that finding it's kind of interesting. Like, I feel like part of it is it are we creating something or are we finding something that's already there? And I think the process sometimes is of trying on stuff that we think like for example, it's like you're a little kid and you're trying to figure out what species of human you are, and you're like, you know what, I think I'm a bird. And you're like, oh, which kind of bird am I? Oh, eagle is cool. I'm gonna try the eagle. I think I want to be like the eagle. And then you try on the eagle and you're, it's actually not me. So maybe there's a process of like finding which kinds of birds you resonate with, and you're like, you know what, I'm a pigeon. I figured it out. And
you're a fucking Carolina Wren. Just accept it.
Exactly. So I think some of it is like what we admire in other people, I think is something we actually admire about ourselves, but maybe we haven't fully realized it yet. It hasn't been self-actualized yet fully, but there's a hint of it there. Like, something about Josh Waitzkin really resonated with me. Your podcast really resonates with me. There's something within you that is kindred within me too. And maybe it's about finding my way of expressing it that's truly me versus just regurgitating all your guys' stuff.
Yeah. And look, I'm doing the same thing. And that's partly why I did this podcast in the first place is, you know, Emily was saying, like, look, if you really want to help people, you need to kind of find your own language. You need to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet and like be sort of more than just like that supporting role. I'm like, that's part of what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to like put ideas into words in my own way. And that's just that's the individuation process, according to Jung, you know, like that's the path to a meaningful life, in my opinion. I remember something else I wanted to talk to you about relative to win-loss and hunting, and specifically because, you know, I've trained a couple of novice hunters. One of them is still like working with me, so to speak. And other than maybe like dating, there's probably no higher failure rate in anything, in any pursuit other than hunting. If you think about it, like, we can just let's specifically say whitetail deer hunting in this case, or like ruminant hunting. So elk, whatever, anything that walks around on 4 legs and eats mostly grass type shit. We'll say, like, how many times, what would you say your success rate, if we're defining success as like successfully recovered animal, what would you say like your success rate is for all your hunts?
Oh man, with the bow, it's so hard. I went out my first year. I probably hunted 20, I don't know, 20, 25 days. Didn't even draw my bow back. You know, I was like, couldn't even close the distance. So all that's gone. And then second year, I don't know how many days it took. I think it took maybe 5 to 7 days, and I got my first elk. I know the archery success rate is like 8 to 10% in that region.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably single digits. Like you, I went my whole first season without ever drawing my bow. I didn't even see a fucking deer in the woods my first season. I mean, I was like 10, so who knows what the hell I was doing. But yeah, like it's single digits, and like I'm dealing with these 2 hunters, and it's like a tale of 2 hunters. Like, they're both about the same age, but one of them is just so accustomed to like being good at things with minimal, and like, for those of you who are listening to this, I just did good in air quotes, good at things with like minimal effort. And And it was just such a shock to his system to fail, and then to fail like in really profound ways, like just catastrophically, like fuck things up, which like, hey, guess what? Like that's normal. You know, like everyone goes through this thing, but like it's so much harder to stomach when you're a fully, I say fully formed. I'm going to put that in air quotes too, because no adult is fully formed. But like when you're a fully formed adult with like a career and success under your belt, you know, it's a real shock to your system. And like, I'm painting this analogy for anyone who's like on the fence about really fully embracing this competitive journey, because like the failure rate is still going to be lower than so many other pursuits that you could follow, and the growth rate is going to be just like exponentially high. And like I feel the same way about hunting too. I mean, like imagine if you and I, our first year hunting, were like truly dependent on this for survival. Like we'd be fucking dead. Unless like
sure.
we've met, there's some much better hunters in our tribe, or like we encountered some friendly strangers on the playa who wanted to help us out and give us elk meat. Like that's the only way we were going to make it, right? Like maybe we have other skills to persuade these people to help us, but yeah, like it's, the outcome is not the point, you know. The outcome is not the point. Getting that success, like to me, the guy, hypothetically, if he hyped himself up and got in my face listening to music and got that false positive, like he learned a lot less than I did by going out there and like losing 12-0 or whatever, you know. And it's analogous to like the kid who goes out on his first ever hunt. He's hunting over a bait pile and he shoots a deer with his crossbow, versus the kid who spends his whole first hunting season never seeing a fucking deer. Like, which kid learned more?
Totally. Totally. And it's also interesting because it's hard to attribute what is my control, my doing versus what is total luck. Like the person who drew you when you were food poisoned, super sick, like he could have just thought, oh, dude, I'm really good at XYZ when you weren't in your 100%. Like, who knows? Like, people pick stocks and, oh, I'm a genius. I picked that stock. I knew it was going to go up. You have no idea. It's so complex. 50% of that could have been luck, and you could have attributed 100% of it to yourself and your own smarts. So I think it isn't good to keep in perspective the mystery of how things play out. But I want to know. That's the hard part. I want to know what works and what doesn't. So it's tricky. Maybe
With
over
enough data,
time.
you start to at least identify a pattern, but you know, we'll never know with any certainty. Like what you're saying reminds me of one of my favorite lines from No Country for Old Men, where like Anton Chigurh is about to kill Llewellyn Moss's wife, and she's like, I don't deserve this. And he says to her, deserves got nothing to do with it. You know, like it's just the randomness of the universe unfolding. Like sometimes it is just fucking random, and sometimes it's really dark and it's sinister and miserable, and other times it's not. Thankfully, most of the time it's not. But like we learn from that heartbreak that accompanies it in a way that with much more salience than I think we learn from positive, so-called positive outcomes. But that, like, here's the trick, right? None of that changes the fact that what you're about to do is fucking terrifying and hard.
Yep.
So it's just practice of like sitting with that dissonance. That's what competition is all about in my mind, is how can I just learn to tolerate and then maybe even enjoy this dissonance.
Oh, and I'm out on a hunting trip for a week, and I come back Friday. Saturday is my comp day, so there's gonna be that little mental weirdness in my head and how do I deal with that. So each one's
shit, man! I didn't know you were going hunting. Where are you going?
I'm going to Saskatchewan for goose and duck. I have a friend
that sounds fun.
His first year in a duck club, and he invited a handful of us out there. So very generous of him to do so. So I had to say yes. But I land on Friday, and then Saturday's comp day. So I don't even know if I'll be able to roll on Friday. So I'll have a week of
just roll around in the bottom of the duck blind.
Exactly. Get the dog, just work some stuff on him.
Yeah, that's something I've never done. I've never done any duck hunting, but it always looked fun to me. My wife's side of the family they're all Southerners and they enjoy that shit. Dove too. Never had the pleasure. Just a simple dude from the Northeast.
It is fun. It's a lot of boring sitting around, and then all of a sudden a ton of action, and then go back right down, just chilling, sitting around, and then bam, a ton of action. But I like
it's crazy
the big
to think
game
about,
stuff,
like
though.
this, the same survivor ducks that are flying over you guys will just like make their way down here eventually.
I know
as they fly
just get
south.
shot out. They just got shot at the entire year, just like on their way down.
Just getting shot at over the Midwest,
Yeah.
getting shot at over the Northeast.
Yep,
Just got to get
shot
to
at in
Florida.
Texas.
Yeah.
So,
Horrible.
yeah.
Life eats life, folks. If I haven't said that enough on this podcast, then just say it again. And if you have a problem with it, that's probably not the podcast for you. Sorry.
I'm excited to do that episode, me, you, and Jake, about hunting and jiu-jitsu. We deep dive into the parallels.
Yeah, me too, dude. Me too. I feel like the hunting season, I think, kicks off next week here. It starts super early in New Jersey just because we have so many deer and like no natural predators and not too many hunters. So like it starts in September and it goes like all the way through February. And I just feel like I'm so unprepared. I literally have like 2 good arrows. I was down to 3. And I killed that deer in October and that arrow snapped, which was fucking crazy. So yeah, like I'm gonna go to. I guess I just have no time for anything. Like maybe I'll go to the archery shop this weekend and be like, hey, can you like refletch these arrows now? I'm sure there's like 100 guys ahead of me. So that's probably not going to get me very far. I'll see if they could like at least clone my arrows, but my arrows are so weird. I don't know if they're going to be able to clone them. They're like 550 grains. They're like I shoot baseball bats. And they have like brass inserts to add like extra weight. So like they're probably not going to be able to match that, like but I'll make do. Like I've got 2 good arrows. I'm not going to get 2 shots at a deer.
Yeah,
but like I need more arrows. I've only hung 1 camera and it's in a shitty spot, not seeing anything. But like I don't know, it'll be all right. Like I figured this shit out when I was 12 and had no cameras and a way shittier bow and probably had more arrows than I have now, but I'll deal with that. Like I'll be ready to go. But I do feel so flat-footed and like this is life. This is my life with a child. And there was talk about like this evolution that we go through and this embracing aspects of ourself that are sort of not core to our personality or whatever. This would be like unconscionable to me 10 years ago. Like I would think like I would fucking melt down before it would be this close to deer season and like I don't have enough arrows. But like this is where I'm at, man. I'm feeling whatever I'm feeling. I'm just rolling with it. Like it's the same thing I'm experiencing with my jiu-jitsu journey right now. Like I'm just being honest with myself about how things are internally and externally and just going with it. That doesn't mean like you be reckless about it. Like I'm being a little bit reckless right now, but the fact of the matter is there are other priorities in my life. And I know that hunting will sort itself out. So it's a long way of
I'm excited to hear your reflections this fall on the podcast. And when you're right in the peak of that hunting mode, we should do that podcast with Jake. That'd be really fun.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to do it in September because it's like I don't have my Apple Watch on. I want to say it's like 80 degrees outside right now. It'll probably be 80 degrees on opening day. It at least needs to be a little frosty, before we can do that podcast. So maybe we aim to do it in October. But like to bring things full circle here, I did want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned this earlier in the podcast, how sort of like journaling has been this like integral North Star thing for you, guiding you through jiu-jitsu and like through life in general. And you have this amazing project that you have going on right now. And I'd really love for people to learn a little bit more about that and potentially how, whether you're competing or not competing, it doesn't really matter, like how Sherpa could help you. in terms of shaping
Yeah.
your jiu-jitsu or shaping any athletic pursuit?
Yeah, so Sherpa Journal, it's available on the iOS App Store. We're hoping to get it out on Android eventually, but it's a free app. It's an AI powered journal to help guide your path in this journey. Any athletic pursuit, any pursuit really. But basically, it's pretty simple. You log into the app and you write, what is my intention for practice? There's a little prompt. And then after practice, you write, what went well? What do I want to improve at? And then what's a highlight from practice today? And then every 5 entries or so, the AI part will read through all your entries and then give you what we call an insight, where they'll share, hey, this is one area you seem to be progressing. And then here's one area, like a challenge or a problem that you keep running into over and over. And so, yeah, I've been journaling for Jiu-Jitsu just in a regular note app for a long time, probably like just around 200 entries now. And one day I decided to copy and paste all those into ChatGPT, start asking it questions, and found it revelatory. And so the insights are interesting. They're not like, holy shit, I had no idea, but they're a good validation of like, oh, I had a hunch about this, and now this is an extra point to validate it. So that's kind of what the app is and what it does, where the idea came from. I actually just switched from paper journaling, like in my normal regular journal, to an AI journal, just like coming back from Burning Man, because I was like, man, it'd be nice to get to like look through that stuff for Burning Man next year and search it and like get insights out of it. But yeah, we're hoping to do that, more of that for athletes, to help them become, be more intentional and reflective and just get more out of their training. I don't know if it's for like the overthinkers out there who are also happen to have athletic endeavors, or maybe just more thoughtful people, but it's definitely like the nerdy type, I think.
Yeah, well, so this is something Emily and I talk a lot about on BJJ Mental Models. Like, you need feedback loops, and you need internal and external feedback loops. So an internal feedback loop is something like a journal, but the big weakness of journals is exactly what you're describing. Like, it's kind of like I have a closet full of journals over here. It's a process to go back and see where the gaps were in my thinking. And I've always wanted something that would do that for me. And like, you've created that something, and it's great.
Thank you. Yeah, that is the hardest part. I used to go back and like reread all my journals. It would take like forever. And this year I tried to do it again. It's gonna take forever. So that's making me want to switch to the digital because of the AI stuff to do that. We're hoping to make it more interactive, and maybe one day you can chat with your journal, like stuff like that, and ask it questions. Because that would be really cool. But right now the version is bare bones MVP. That's why it's like free for everybody. But yeah, I'm excited for it to grow. It feels very me.
Yeah.
It's a very me thing to put out there in the world.
Yeah. And that's why, that's partly why, to our point of discussion earlier, like, that's why I think it's good. It's true to you. And I think it's going to be true to a lot of other people out there who are listening to this conversation and nodding their heads, who, haven't shut it off already since we started talking about hunting. Although, like, when I've talked about hunting on this podcast, it's been some of the more popular episodes. So I don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see. Josh, it's awesome talking to you, man. I'm so glad that we've formed this relationship, and we're talking about doing some other exciting shit. I hope it happens. But regardless, I'm looking forward to that conversation with you and Jake. And I'm looking forward to some time in the woods this fall.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me on, allowing me to share this little slice of my life and where I am in the jiu-jitsu journey early on, and then to talk about the cool app that I'm super excited about. I hope people find value in it. I think there is value in just in doing it, setting the intention and reflecting after, even if you never read them again. I think that's why people journal, but hoping the AI can bring some of that value back later on. So yeah, test it out. I'll send you a link, Joe, and
yeah, we'll put it in the show notes and everything. Is there verbally, if people don't go to the show notes, is there a place they should go to get it?
Yeah, if you go to www.sherpa, SHERPA, journal.ai, that's the website. That basically just links to the App Store. So if you have an iPhone or an iPad, you can go to the App Store and just search up Sherpa Journal. It's like a green S and a black square icon. And yeah, download it. It's free. Check it out. You join our Discord and tell me everything that's broken with it. But right now it's pretty bare bones, and we want to keep evolving it. So yeah.
Good stuff, man. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks again for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Josh Liu. This is something that I'm going to try to be doing more often, say on like a monthly basis, bringing on someone on the podcast in the community whom I respect and whom I think has great ideas, who I think has great ideas to share with you. Josh has a long-standing open invitation to just be on the podcast whenever he wants, as far as I'm concerned. And thank you very much, Josh, for coming out and sharing your time. As usual, the usual closing formalities. We've got a couple things coming up. One is merchandise. We're going to have 2 t-shirt designs, one done by my good buddy Jamie, who's a black belt at Princeton BJJ. He designed the logo for the podcast, and another done by Diego, the design phenom in Los Angeles, who is the brain behind Power Trip. Check out Power Trip if you haven't done so already. Be on the lookout for details about where and how to order those. The other thing I want to tell you about is this free book club I'm hosting at Princeton BJJ. We're taking a deep dive into works that I've found to be formative in the peak performance space, both in jiu-jitsu and in life. It's totally free to participate. The registration link will be in the show notes. There's going to be a Zoom option for people out there, and there'll be an in-person option most likely for students of the school, though many of them may elect to just do it on Zoom. We'll see. It's going to be on Sunday, September 29th at 7:30 p.m. You can register by clicking the link in the show notes. It's a Kicksite link. Again, totally free. Our first book that we're going to be taking a look at is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And you can find copies of Meditations all over the internet for free. Meditations is also the namesake of this podcast. So we'll be talking about the implications of Stoicism for peak performance in jiu-jitsu and in life. We're also going to talk about its limitations, because while it is a framework, one that I find extremely useful and helpful, frameworks have limitations because by their very nature, the map is not the territory. So we will sort of get into the lower resolution areas of the map and how we might color those in with other modalities, which we will explore in later editions of this book club. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Stoicism is a beautiful framework, an empowering framework, and one I think that is highly beneficial for modern human beings. But that's all I've got for you this week, folks. Thank you very much for listening, and we will talk soon.